pandemic crisis. Dr. Devi Nampiaparampil joins us right now for the NU School of Medicine. Doctor, I'm so glad you're here now because I was thinking of your last warning when we were together. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is all good news, but a lot of people are taking seriously this advice from the CDC that at least if you've been vaccinated, go ahead and fly. Now, what the CDC director did not say is that those who've not been vaccinated should go hop on a plane. But how would you guide folks on that?
Well, I think it is great news. And I think people who are vaccinated can enjoy some freedom at this point. I mean, they've been waiting for a long time. If you are unvaccinated, I think still you can separate yourselves into two groups, which the CDC hasn't discussed as fully. I mean, people who are unvaccinated, some of them have already had COVID, some of them haven't, right? So there was an NIH study that came out at the end of January that looked at the folks that have had COVID and have recovered, and if they have antibodies or not. So some of them have antibodies, and those antibodies have been present for about 8 months. So they were looking at people who've recovered and how long their antibodies last. And so initially the CDC had said that maybe if you've recovered from COVID, your antibodies don't last as long as if you have been vaccinated. But the vaccines haven't even been around for 8 months yet. But some of these people actually have long-lasting immunity. So that has to be fleshed out further. I'm not issuing a guidance about that, but I'm just saying that the people who have antibodies may also have significant protection against COVID, because the whole point of the vaccine is to give you antibodies that can fight against the virus. So those people may be in a different position than people who never have had COVID and may also be at risk to get COVID and at risk for complications. Usually in medicine, as opposed to public health as a whole, in medicine, we sort of stratify people as low risk, medium risk, high risk, not just for catching COVID, but also for having complications. So we know some people are more at risk for having complications than others. I mean, obviously, if you have multiple medical problems, cardiovascular risk factors, people who are obese, people who are older, then you're more at risk for having a problem than if you're younger and you're very healthy. So I think that those factors should be taken into consideration when you're thinking about traveling as well. But I think people, they want to have some freedom. Me too. I group myself in that category as well. So I don't think people need to be as scared and as afraid. They should also feel like they have some power over their own lives. But you have to think of everything in terms of risks, benefits, and what are your alternatives as well.
Real quickly, Doctor, when I did catch up with Dr. Fauci, he mentioned the possibility that going forward and after we're through this pandemic crisis, this might be something as simple as a flu shot every year we have to take going forward for this. Doesn't know if it's going to be necessary, but it's a possibility. What do you think of that?
I think that's possible. I mean, it's hard to tell what the course of things will be. I mean, right now, people are talking about vaccine passports. People are talking about kids getting vaccinated. So I think rather than just the health issues, some of this will also depend on how the private sector and the government sort of look at the COVID situation, because from what I can tell, some of this has to do even in terms of, let's say, the private sector. We're looking at paid sick leave, if businesses have to close also, depending on whether people get exposed to COVID, if there's still a quarantine situation. If you look at all of these other factors that come into play, then yes, people may feel like, okay, they've got to constantly get vaccinated or even at least get vaccinated or have a vaccine passport in order for the economy to kind of stay open or for these businesses to stay open. But if you don't see things like that, then maybe people will feel like, okay, maybe we'll just see how things go by just kind of preventing the infection, whether it's through herd immunity or through masks or through other measures. So I think there will be several factors that are completely unrelated to the antibody situation or unrelated to the infection that are going to determine whether we continue to get vaccines or whether we'll be done after this year.
All right, we shall see. The bottom line, a lot of good news, and you were on top of it very, very early, Doctor. Dr. Devi Nampiaparampil, the NYU School of Medicine, Metropolis Pain Medicine Director. Thanks again, Doctor.